1988. France. Jean-Marc Boivin of France makes the first paraglider descent of the mountain. Boivin's 11 to 12 minute, 2,948 meters, 9,700 feet descent to Camp 2 holds the altitude record for the start of a paraglider flight. France's Marc Battard completed the southeast route ascent without supplementary oxygen in the record time of 22 hours 30 minutes from base camp to summit. China. Japan. Nepal. On May 5, a joint team from China, Japan, and Nepal reached the top from the north and the south simultaneously and crossed over to descend from the opposite sides. This event was broadcast live worldwide. United States. September 29, Stacey Allison becomes the first American woman atop Everest. New Zealand. October 16, Lydia Brady, New Zealand, became the first woman to climb Everest without oxygen, via the SE Ridge, climbing alone. Initially, two of her teammates, who were not at base camp at the time, disputed her claim, but since then the ascent has been recognized by several governments and the Himalayan database, Nepal. Czechoslovakia. October 17, Josef Just, Slovakia, became the first and only climber to climb Bonington's SW face route without oxygen, after reaching South Summit with teammates Dusan Bisic, Peter Bozic, and Yaroslav Yasko. The team was exhausted after the last bivouac under South Summit and just went to summit Everest solo, while the other three began to descend towards South Colonel after rejoining and their last radio contact with the base camp. They disappeared in a strong storm and their bodies had never been found. Slovak expedition had two main objectives, to summit Lhotse and repeat the British route, so Justin Bisic also summited Lhotse 19 days before the tragedy. Nepal. On May 10, 1988, Sungdair Sherpa became the first person to summit Everest 5 times. Sungdair first submitted on October 2, 1979. United States. Canada. United Kingdom. On May 12, 1988, Stephen Venables became the first Briton to summit Everest without oxygen, alone. Team leaders Robert Anderson and Ed Webster reached the south summit. All three, with Paul Tier, had climbed a new route up the Kangshung face to the South Col, with no oxygen and no high-altitude porters. Australia. In 1988, John Muir became the first Australian to reach the summit without a Sherpa. 1989. Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. May 10, Yugoslav expedition. Southeast Ridge. Stike Bozic, Vicky Grosselj, Dimitar Ilievsky Morato, and Sherpa Sonam and Ajiva all reached the summit. Ilievsky Morato failed to return. Mexico. Nepal. May 16, Ricardo Torres Nava and two Sherpas, on Lakpa and Dorje, got to the mountaintop with supplementary oxygen in an American expedition. Torres Nava becomes the first Mexican and Latin American to do so. Mexico. July 18, Carlos Carsolio reached the summit without bottled oxygen. This would be his fifth 8,000er of 14. 1990. Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. On October 7, Maria and Andrei Stremfolj became the first married couple to reach the summit. Maria Stremfolj was the first Yugoslav woman to reach the summit. New Zealand. Peter Hillary, Edmund Hillary's son, became the first offspring of a summit to reach the summit. Australia. Tim McCartney-Snape became the first person to walk and climb from sea level to the top of Mount Everest, his second ascent of the peak. McCartney-Snape began his approximately 1,200 kilometers (750 miles) sea to summit expedition 3 months earlier, on foot, on Sagar Island, in the Bay of Bengal. 1992. Chile. Two rival Chilean expeditions, one led by Rodrigo Jordan climbing the second ever ascent through the Kangshung, and the other led by Mauricio Pato, became the first South Americans to reach the summit. The first Chilean and South American climber to set foot on the summit was Cristian Garcia Huidobro at 10:25 on May 15, who was claimed to have insulted and mocked the rival team's leader, Pato, as he reached the summit in second place. Supposedly, a member of Pato's team pushed Garcia Huidobro, enticing him to fight. If this quarrel ever took place, it has the dubious honor of being the highest brawl in the world. 1993. Nepal. April 22, first ascent by a Nepali woman, Paun Lama Sherpa. She died while descending. Spain. Venezuela. October 7, Ramon Blanco of Spain/Venezuela became the oldest person to reach the summit aged 60 years, 160 days. India May 10, Santosh Yadav of India became the first woman to climb Mount Everest twice within a year, May 1992 and May 1993. 1995. Brazil May 14, first ascent by a Brazilian, Waldemar Niklovic and Mozart Cateo. Niklovic summited again in 2005. United Kingdom Alison Hargreaves became the first woman, and second person after Reinhold Messner, to climb Everest alone without oxygen tanks or support from a Sherpa team. Japan Nihon University climbers Kiyoshi Furuno and Shigeki Yamato become the first to summit along the full northeast ridge, the last remaining unclimbed route. 16-year-old Mark Pfetzer became the youngest at the time to climb Everest. 1996. In 1996, 15 people died trying to reach the summit, making it the deadliest year in Everest history. On May 10, a storm stranded several climbers between the summit and the safety of Camp 4, killing Rob Hall, Scott Fisher, Yasuko Namba, Doug Hansen, and guide Andy Harris on the south and the Indian, Ladakhi, climbers Tsewang Palger, Dorje Morup, Tsewang Smanla on the north. Hall and Fisher were both highly experienced climbers who were leading paid expeditions to the summit. Journalist John Krakauer, on assignment from Outside Magazine, was at Hall's party. He published the bestseller Into Thin Air about the experience. Anatoly Bukreev, a guide who felt impugned by Krakauer's book, co-authored a rebuttal book called The Climb. The dispute sparked a large debate within the climbing community. In May 2004, Kent Moore, a physicist, and John L. Semple, a surgeon, both researchers from the University of Toronto, told New Scientist magazine that an analysis of weather conditions on that day suggested that freak weather caused oxygen levels to plunge approximately 14%, 77-78. During the same season, climber and filmmaker David Breschers and his team filmed the IMAX feature Everest on the Mountain. Some climbing scenes were later recreated for the film in British Columbia, Canada. The 70mm IMAX camera was specially modified to be lightweight enough to carry up the mountain and to function in the extreme cold with the use of particular greases on the mechanical parts, plastic bearings, and special batteries. Production was halted as Breschers and his team assisted the survivors of the May 10 disaster, but the team eventually reached the top on May 23 and filmed the first large-format footage of the summit. On Breschers' team was Jamling Tenzing Norgay, the son of Norgay, following in his father's footsteps for the first time. Also on his team was Ed Viesters of Seattle, Washington, who summited without the use of supplemental oxygen, and Araceli Segarra, who became the first woman from Spain to summit Everest. The storm's impact on climbers on the mountain's other side, the North Ridge, where several climbers also died, was detailed in a first-hand account by British filmmaker and writer Matt Dickinson in his book The Other Side of Everest. Nepal Sherpa Ongrita was the first person to summit 10 times, between May 7, 1983 through May 23, 1996. Italy Hans Kammerlander climbed the mountain from the north side in the record ascent time of 17 hours from base camp to the summit. He climbed alone without supplementary oxygen and skied down from 7,800 meters. Sweden Goran Kropp of Sweden became the first person to ride his bicycle home in Sweden to the mountain, scale it alone without the use of oxygen tanks, and bicycle most of the way back. 1998. The United States-United Kingdom naturalized American and British-born Tom Whitaker, whose right foot had been amputated, became the first disabled person to successfully reach the summit. Nepal Kazi Sherpa became the fastest to summit via the southeast ridge, South Col, without supplemental oxygen. Kazi took 20 hours 24 minutes from base camp to the summit, alone, unsupported, and drug unaided, Diamox not used, thereby breaking Mark Bettard's previous record from 1988 by 2 hours 5 minutes. United Kingdom Bear Grylls on May 16, at 23, one of the youngest Britons to summit. Uzbekistan Ristam Rajapov and 11 alpinists, including a woman Svetlana Baskakova from Uzbekistan, first climbed Everest in 1998, then Ilyas Tukvatulin and Andrei Zykin climbed to the summit. 1999. Nepal Sherpa Babu Chiri Sherpa of Nepal stayed for 21 hours on the mountaintop. South African Kathy O'Dowd became the first woman to reach the summit from northern and southern routes. Mexico May 5, Elsa Avila became the first Mexican and Latin American woman to summit. Japan May 13, Japanese Ken Noguchi submitted, making him the youngest to reach the highest peaks on all 7 continents at 25 years 265 days old. Portugal May 18, João Garcia became the first Portuguese to climb Mount Everest. Ecuador May 25, Ivan Vallejo became the first Ecuadorian to reach the top without bottled oxygen. It would be his third 8,000er of his 14. Georgia May 26, Mamukat Sikaseli from Georgia climbed from the Tibet side at 11:32 a.m. local time. Georgia May 12, Lev Sarkisov from Georgia became the oldest person to reach the summit aged 60 years, 160 days. Greece Konstantin Niarchos, billionaire Stavros Niarchos' son, became the first Greek to summit Mount Everest. Main article, Mallory and Irvine Research Expedition. United Kingdom United States Germany on the north side of the mountain, as part of Eric Simonson and Johan Hemleb's search expedition, on May 1, Conrad Anker discovered the body of George Mallory at 8,165 m, roughly below the ice axe discovered on the northeast ridge in 1933. No camera was found. Rope jerk modeling around Mallory's waist suggests he was roped to Irvine during that or a previous fall. 2000. Pakistan on May 17, Nazir Sabir from Pakistan reached the highest summit at 0730 hours, becoming the first Pakistani to summit. Netherlands on May 17, Frits Bridgeland from Netherlands reached the top at 11:20 hours, becoming the first Dutch to summit via the north side. Slovenia on October 7, Davo Karnikar from Slovenia became the first man to accomplish an uninterrupted ski descent from the top to the base camp in 5 hours. Karnikar reached speeds of 75 miles per hour, while Japanese climber and skier Yuichiro Miura is known for his May 6, 1970 feat as the man who skied down Everest, his 1,280 meters, 4,199 feet, descent on skis began from Everest's 7,906 meters, 25,938 feet, South Kernel. Poland Anna Czerwinska from Poland became the oldest woman to summit Mount Everest, at the time, at the age of 50, born July 10, 49 and climbed Everest from the Nepal side on May 22, 2000. Spain Andalusia on May 22, at 9:30 in the morning, Manuel Gonzalez from Malaga and Ivan Jara from Sevilla became the first mountaineer from Andalusia to reach the summit. They were also accompanied by cameraman Juanjo Gara. 2001. Nepal on May 23, at 16 years and 14 days, Tembat Sheri Sherpa became the youngest person to reach the summit. France on May 24, 22-year-old Marco Siffredi of France became the first person to descend on a snowboard. United States on May 25, 32-year-old Eric Wyanmeyer of Boulder, Colorado, became the first blind person to reach the summit. 64-year-old Sherman Bull, of New Canaan, Connecticut, became the oldest person to reach the summit. Colombia Manuel Arturo Barrios and Fernando González Rubio became the first Colombians to reach the summit. 19 people made it to the summit, surpassing the previous record of 10 people. 2002. Russia expedition by Ural Mountaineering from Ekaterinburg led by Gennady Kurevsky summited Everest via the north side. All 9 members summited on May 18, 2002. Japan Tamie Watanabe summits at the age of 63 years and 177 days on May 16, the oldest woman to do so until she sets the record again in 2012. United States Phil and Susan Urschler first couple to climb the 7 summits after reaching the Everest summit on May 16, 2002. 2003. United States Dick Bass, the first American to climb the 7 summits, and who first reached the summit in 1985 at 55 years old, returned to attempt to reclaim his title at age 73, but he made it to base camp only. Bass's teammates included Jim Wickwire and John Roskelley. The Outdoor Life Network staged a high-profile survivor-style show in which the winners got the chance to climb Everest. Conrad Anker and David Breschers were commentators on this expedition. Japan Yuichiro Miura became the oldest person to reach the summit at 70 years and 222 days, on May 22. Nepal 25-year-old Nepalese Sherpa Pemba Dorji made the world's fastest ascent in 12 hours 45 minutes on May 23. Nepal 3 days later, Sherpa Lakpa Jello broke this record with 10 hours and 56 minutes. After a short dispute with Dorji, the tourism ministry confirmed Jellu's record in July. Nepal Ming Kipa, 15, became the youngest woman to climb Everest, also becoming the youngest person from 2003 to 2010. 2004. Nepal. The claimed fastest oxygen-supported ascent over the southeast ridge, South Col, was Nepalese Pemba Dorji Sherpa's 2004 climb, taking 8 hours and 10 minutes for the 17 km route from base camp to the summit. Pemba's record claim was subject to an unprecedented dispute by renowned Mount Everest chronicler Elizabeth Hawley and other mountaineers in Nepal. Pemba was later arrested and jailed for his alleged involvement in a swindling scandal unrelated to Mount Everest. In 2017, Pemba Dorji's record was rejected and removed by the Nepal government. Also on this climb, Robert Jen became the first Asian American to climb Mount Everest. Russia. A 13-man Russian expedition led by Viktor Kozlov climbed Everest via the North Face. Team members summited between May 29 and June 1, 2004. Greece's first Greek expedition led 5 climbers to the summit from the south side and 3 from the north. 2005. China. A Chinese government-sponsored survey team with 24 members reached the peak on May 22 to anchor surveying equipment for the remeasurement of summit height. Several methods were used to assess snow and ice thickness for the new measurement and to compare it with historical data. France. On May 14, a Eurocopter AS-350B3 helicopter flew and landed on the summit for the first time, repeating the feat the next day. Nepal. The world record of first couple married on top of the Mount Everest has been achieved by Mr. Pem Dorji Sherpa and Ms. Moni Milapati from Nepal. On May 30, 2005, Pem and Moni reached Mount Everest and got married at 29035 feet height of Mount Everest. They are the first couple to be married on the top in the history of climbing. Both were part of the Rotary Centennial Everest expedition. 2006. New Zealand. On May 15, New Zealander Mark Inglis became the first person to reach the summit with 2 artificial legs. On May 15, sportsman Maxine Chaya was the first Lebanese to climb Mount Everest, completing the 7 Summits Challenge. On December 28, 2007, he also became the first from the Middle East to reach the South Pole on foot from the Antarctic coast after an unsupported and unassisted journey that lasted 47 days. Japan. On May 17, 70-year-old Takao Arayama reached the peak, becoming the oldest man by 3 days to reach the summit. Philippines. On May 17, 32-year-old Leo Oration became the first Filipino to reach the summit. He was part of the first Philippine Mount Everest expedition along with fellow mountaineer Erwin Pastor-Emeta, who reached the summit the following day, May 18. The expedition was supported by the TV network ABS-CBN. Another Filipino, Romy Gardus, reached the summit on May 19. He was financed and supported by the TV network GMA7. Dale Abanojar, another Filipino mountaineer who made an independent summit attempt, claimed to have reached the summit on May 15, 2 days ahead of Oration, from the northern side. Abanojar's claim has been registered in Elizabeth Hawley's Himalayan database, but the claim remains dubious. Nepal. On May 19, Appa Sherpa of Fame, Nepal summit for the 16th time, breaking his world record. United States. Also on May 19, Sophia Dannenberg became the first Black American and the first Black woman to reach the summit. United Kingdom. Pauline Sanderson became the first person to complete a self-propelled ascent of Mount Everest, the highest point on the Earth's surface, starting from the Dead Sea, at -423 meters, -1,388 feet, the lowest point on the Earth's surface. Sanderson began her approximately 8,000 kilometers, 5,000 miles, Everest Max expedition 6 months earlier, by bicycle, from the shore of the Dead Sea in Jordan. Sanderson's husband, Phil, joined her for the final ascent, making them the first married British couple to summit Everest together. 2007. Nepal. On May 16, Appa Sherpa climbed Everest for the 17th time, breaking his REA. India. On the 15th and the 16th of May, 25 members, including 13 Sherpas, of the Indian Army Everest Expedition 2007, scaled Mount Everest. This was the 4th expedition by the Indian Army to Everest, but the first from the Tibet side. Egypt on May 17, Omar Samra became the first Egyptian and youngest Arab to reach the summit of Everest, at 719 EGP. Japan on May 22, Katsusuke Yanagisawa became the oldest person to reach the summit at 71 years and 61 days. United Kingdom on May 24, Kenton Kool reached the summit for the second time in a week. On May 17, the first traverse by three women, Noelle Wenceslaw, Karina Dayondon, and Janet Bellarmino, Filipina, came to the north side of Tibet and went down to the south side of Nepal. Austria. The fastest ascent via the northeast ridge was accomplished by Austrian climber Christian Stangl, who took 16 hours 42 minutes for the 10 kilometers distance from Camp 3, Advanced Base Camp, to the summit, just barely beating Italian Hans Kammerlander's record of 17 hours, accomplished in 1996. Both men climbed alone. In 2010, Stangl was proven and later confessed to having claimed a fraudulent summit climb of K2 in 2010. 2008. Saudi Arabia on May 21, Farrokhzad Al-Zuman reached the summit of Everest and became the first Saudi Arabian to climb Everest. Nepal on May 22, 2008, Appa Sherpa climbed Everest for the 18th time, again breaking his sea. Japan. Nepal. Yuichiro Miura reclaimed his title of the oldest person to reach the summit at age 75 years and 227 days on May 26, but it was later established that the day before, Nepali Min Bahadur Shirchan, aged 76 years and 330 days, hit summit. Yuichiro Miura once again reclaimed his title of oldest to reach the summit on May 22, 2013, at age 80. India. On May 21, Kalpana Dash was the first Oriya mountaineer to scale Mount Everest. Mexico. Axel Duhart Villavicencio becomes the fourth Mexican to summit Everest. Canada. Laura Mallory, youngest female Canadian to climb Mount Everest in May 2008 with her father and two brothers. 2009. Nepal. On May 16, Appa Sherpa climbed Everest for the 19th time, once again breaking his HFR. Croatia. On May 19, Darija Bosjancic and Iris Bosjancic became the first pair of sisters to simultaneously climb Everest, also making Croatia the only country in the world with more female than male summiteers. South Korea. On May 20, Korean climbers Park Young-suk, Jin Jae-chang, Kang Ki-suk, and Shin Dong-min reached the summit of Everest via a new route on the southwest face, Park's Korean route. United Kingdom. Ranulph Fiennes on May 20, aged 65, the oldest Briton to summit. 2010. United States. The youngest person to climb Mount Everest was 13-year-old Jordan Romero in May 2010 from the Tibetan side. His ascent, as part of an apparent race to bring younger and younger children to the mountain. Shortly after Romero's ascent, Pemba Dorji Sherpa announced plans to bring his 9-year-old son to the summit, triggered a wave of criticism that prompted Chinese authorities to establish age limits on Mount Everest. China no longer grants permit to prospective climbers under 18 or over 60. Nepal sets the minimum age at 16 but has no maximum age. Romero later became the youngest person to climb the 7 summits at 15 years old, 200 days. The oldest climber to reach the summit of Mount Everest from both sides, Nepal and Tibet, of the mountain is 60-year-old Julio Bird, a Puerto Rican cardiologist who reached the summit of Mount Everest from the north side on May 17, 2010. 2011. Japan. Takashi Ozaki, 58, dies of altitude sickness while attempting his third ascent. Nepal. Appa Sherpa holds the record for reaching the summit more times than any other person, 21 times between May 10, 1990 and May 11, 2011. The record for a non-Sherpa is held by American climber and expedition guide Dave Hahn, reaching the summit 14 times between May 19, 1994 and May 26, 2012. State of Palestine. Suzanne El Houbi became the first Arab and Palestinian woman to reach the summit of Everest on May 21. 2012. Mount Everest in 2012. Japan. Tamie Watanabe breaks her Hades touches or oldest female summiteer on May 19 at age 73 years and 180 days. She reached the summit from the north side. 2013. United States. On April 1, Eli Reimer, 16, became the first teenager with Down syndrome to climb Everest Base Camp. The expedition was organized to raise funds for Alicia Foundation, a non-profit that supports people living with disabilities. Japan Yuichiro Miura once again reclaimed his title of oldest to reach the summit on May 22, 2013, at age 80. Nepal Phurba Tashi Sherpa equals Appa Sherpa's record of 21 summits of Mount Everest. India Aryanima Sinha became the first female amputee to scale Mount Everest on May 21, 2013. 2014 Mount Everest avalanche kills 16 people, making it the second worst Everest disaster in history. As a result, most expeditions from the Nepalese side for the year are cancelled. India on May 25, Mulvath Purnat became the youngest woman to reach the summit at age 13 years and 11 months. She climbed from the north side. Faroe Islands on May 25, Arn Vatnamar became the first Faroese to climb Mount Everest. 2015 Mount Everest avalanches. April 2015 Nepal earthquake triggered an avalanche on Mount Everest, killing at least 18 people at South Base Camp. An Indian Army mountaineering team reportedly recovered 18 bodies. Between 700 and 1,000 people were thought to be on the mountain at the time, with at least 61 injured and an unknown number missing were trapped at camps at higher altitudes. August 2015 Everest was reopened to climbers in August, but only one climbing permit was issued, to Japanese mountaineer Nobukazu Koriki. He turned around 700 m below the summit in October, in the autumn post-monsoon season. He had tried 4 times previously, losing all his fingers to frostbite. 2016 The Nepal Department of Tourism said by June 2016 that about 456 people made it to the summit of Mount Everest, including 45 women. They noted some good summit windows, and on one day, May 19, 2016, 209 climbers made it to the summit. By May 11, 2016, the lines were fixed on the south side of Everest, after which several hundred climbers would make it up in the critical weather windows. Alan Arnett published his Everest report by year-end, based on results for the now 93-year-old Elizabeth Hawley, which were released in December 2016. For 2016, her records indicate 641 made it to the summit in early 2016. On May 11, 2016, a Calgary physician died in Tibet, in the Chinese side base camp. A 25-year-old Nepali named Phurba Sherpa, fixing lines near the Lhotse summit, fell to his death. A guide company, Arnold Koster Expeditions, suffered 2 fatalities, and a third client had to be airlifted out. One was a man from the Netherlands, and another was a South African-born Australian woman. Her husband had tried to save her, but he also ran into trouble and had to be airlifted out with medical complications. These deaths were very widely reported in international news and triggered some public discussion about Everest mountaineering and tourism. The death toll for Everest climbers rose to 5 in most reports by late May 2016, and death headorder of a high-altitude worker on Lhotse face during the season. Everest summiteers sometimes need to climb Lhotse S depending on the route, gave a total of 6 known deaths from the Everest massif by the time the season drew to a close. Although not widely reported during May, a climber in Tibet died on May 11, 2016, which makes it possibly 6 for Mount Everest and 7 for the Everest massif. The Nepal Ministry of Tourism said 5 people died. 2017 The Mount Everest climbing season of 2017 began in spring with the first climbers reaching the top on May 11, from the north side. The first team on the south side reached the top on May 15. By early June, reports from Nepal indicated that 445 people had made it to the summit from the Nepali side. Reports indicate 160 to 200 summits on the north side, with 600 to 660 summiteers overall for early 2017. This year had a roughly 50% success rate on that side for visiting climbers, which was down from other years. By 2018, the figure for the number of summits of Everest was refined to 648. This includes 449 which were summited via Nepal, from the south, and 120 from Chinese Tibet, north side. Swiss mountaineer Uli Steck died in a fall during a warm-up climb on Nuptse, which he was conducting in preparation for his Everest Lhotse summit bid. By May 22, 2017, 5 climbers had died, and 1 trekker to the base camp died earlier in the year. Several climbers summited twice this season, including Kilian Jornet and Angshu Jamsenpa. Corpse retrievals. The bodies of 2 people who died the previous year, Gautam Ghosh and Paresh Nath, were removed in 2017-79. The 2 had been unable to be retrieved previously because of inclement weather. The body of Uli Stek was recovered near Nuptse, where he had fallen. A recovery operation took place for the body of Vladimir Strba, who died at Camp 4, Nepal side, in May. At the end of May, the body of Ravi Kumar was recovered from above 8,000 meters without loss of additional life. Kumar's body had fallen into a crevasse, and the effort to recover it was described as the most complex recovery mission to ever be attempted on Everest. There was a strong push to recover the body before the window of good weather closed, as the monsoon season to the south grew in force. 2018. In 2018, Mount Everest experienced a record-breaking year in terms of climbers reaching its summit. A total of 807 climbers successfully summited the mountain, surpassing the previous year's record by over 150 summits. The climbers were divided between the Nepal and Chinese Tibet sides, with 563 and 240 climbers respectively. The favorable weather conditions played a significant role in this achievement, as there was an unusually long and clear weather window of 11 consecutive days during the critical spring climbing season. Notably, a 70-year-old double amputee successfully climbed Everest after winning a court case in the Nepali Supreme Court. While there were no major disasters, 7 climbers, including Sherpas and international climbers, lost their lives during various incidents. The increased number of climbers reaching the summit led to concerns among veteran climbers from the 1980s, who lamented the overcrowding, environmental issues such as feces, and the high cost associated with the expeditions. In January 2018, Elizabeth Hawley, a renowned Himalayan record keeper, passed away. The height of Mount Everest was also a topic of discussion, with plans to remeasure it in Nepal. The height has been traditionally recognized as 29,029 feet, 8,848 meters, but remeasurements have yielded slightly different figures due to considerations such as whether the measurement includes ice and snow. It is known that the height of Everest can change due to tectonic plate movements. One of the focuses in 2018 was the removal of trash from the mountain and its surrounding areas. Incentives were provided to Sherpas for removing trash, such as monetary rewards for collecting discarded items. Efforts were made to clean up the trails and reduce environmental impact. The Hillary Step, a prominent feature on the route to Everest's summit, was confirmed to have Wa. Climbers reported that it had transformed into a slope, with the absence of a large stone that was previously present. The Hillary Step had historical significance, as it was climbed by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay during their pioneering ascent in 1953. Nepal honored several notable mountain climbers, including those who had summited Everest in the 1970s and later engaged in humanitarian projects in the country. The season also witnessed the first group of Nepali climbers reaching the summit, paving the way for more climbers from the Nepal side. Permits were granted for 346 climbers during the spring climbing season. Tragically, there were fatalities during the season, including a Japanese climber who had attempted to summit Everest 8 times previously and a climber from Macedonia. By late May, at least 277 climbers had reached the summit, but a few had lost their lives or went missing. Among the noteworthy climbers of 2018 he Adrian Ballinger, who led a team that included Neil Beidelman, a survivor of the 1996 Mount Everest disaster. Lakpa Sherpa set a record with her 9th summit, while Kami Rita Sherpa surpassed the previous record of 21 summits, achieving his 22nd summit. British climber Kenton Cool reached his 13th summit, the highest number for the United Kingdom. Olympic gold medalist Victoria Pendleton attempted a summit but had to abandon due to altitude sickness. Other notable achievements included Alyssa Azar becoming the youngest Australian to summit Everest in 2016 at the age of 19, and then repeating the feat in 2018. She also became the youngest Australian to summit the mountain from both the south and north sides. Additionally, a group of female journalists who climbed Everest as part of the Women Journalists Everest Expedition 2018 were honored by the Prime Minister of Nepal. In summary, 2018 was a remarkable year for 2020. The Nepalese government announced on March 13, 2020 that it was suspending all climbing permits for Mount Everest and all other peaks in the country due to concern over the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Chinese government has already closed its side of Everest. On April 3, 2020, it was announced that more than 24 Chinese climbers were tackling Mount Everest and were expected to reach the advanced base camp on Friday, although only Chinese climbers would be permitted in the spring season. 2021. The Chinese side of Everest remained closed to foreigners. However, the Nepalese government resumed issuing climbing permits, issuing a total of 408. Additionally, the Nepalese government imposed a limit on the number of climbers who could be on Everest at any one time, to prevent traffic jams of climbers on the mountain. During the season, there were several outbreaks of COVID-19 among climbers, compounded by the Nepalese Department of Tourism's neglecting to establish any rules or regulations to mitigate the risk of outbreaks at the South Base Camp. Furthermore, the Nepalese government did not officially acknowledge any cases or outbreaks of COVID on Mount Everest, and there were prohibitions enforced about what climbers were allowed to take photographs of, prompting concerns about the Nepalese government attempting to cover up these problems. In May 2021, citing concerns about COVID, the Chinese government announced plans to draw a separation line at the peak of Everest to prevent the spread of COVID from climbers who ascended from the Nepalese side. Over the 2021 season, a total of 534 people summited Everest, 195 members, 339 Sherpas, and 4 people died. 2022. Once again, the Chinese government prohibited foreign expeditions on the north face of Everest and only permitted one commercial expedition and one scientific expedition to climb Everest, with the scientific expedition installing a series of weather stations on the north face of Everest. The Nepalese side remained open, with 325 climbing permits issued, a sharp decline from 2022 due to China attempts to attract more foreign climbers, such as removing COVID testing requirements on arrival in Nepal for vaccinated travelers. Coincidentally, a new weather station was installed on the south face of Everest as well, at roughly the same altitude as the highest altitude Chinese weather station, to replace another weather station on the Nepalese side which broke down in January 2020. Neither expedition was aware of each other until after the stations were installed. Towards the end of the season, due to a stalled high-pressure system, conditions on Everest were better than usual, being warmer, drier, and less windy, facilitating a higher than usual submitting success rate of 70%. Over the 2022 season, a total of 690 people summited Everest, 640 from the south, 240 members, 400 Sherpas, 50 from the north, and 3 people died. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating adventures. We appreciate your support and look forward to embarking on new explorations together. Stay curious, stay safe, and until next time, keep chasing your dreams.